Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Ecosystem Experience. I'm thrilled to be here today. I've got a wonderful guest joining me today. Do you know, one thing I've always said about ecosystems and communities is the relationships and the people are what make it so special. And this person is someone very special to me. I've even celebrated Christmas with this person in Sweden in the snow. I have the wonderful Julia Wester, who is CEO and co-founder of 55 Degrees, joining me today. Julia, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's really great to be back with you. I love any time I can spend with you, especially talking about fun stuff like ecosystem. So thanks so much for having me.
Well, thank you for being such a part of the journey with me. I'm genuine in that the connections with people are the things that make it special. And you and the 55 Degrees, I remember you opened up your office and welcomed myself and a couple of colleagues from Atlassian in for breakfast one morning. We spent the
Yep.
day with you. It was such a wonderful experience, and I love hanging out in people's offices.
Nice. Yeah, me too. I wish I could do it more often. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I will also acknowledge that it is 7:30 in the morning for me and 10 o'clock at night for you, and so I'm deeply grateful that you are giving up your
Yeah.
late evening to have this conversation. But Julia, let's start with the start. Like, what drew you into the ecosystem that you are a part of?
Yeah, well, I mean, we didn't full go in and say we're going to be a business, but back in 2012, I had just moved to Seattle, Washington to take a job at F5 Networks, and my husband, who's been my co-founder in every ecosystem related venture we've done, he had been at Turner where we worked before for 15 years, and he's like, "Okay, time to change." And he had done a lot of internal plugins at Turner Broadcasting for, Jira, Confluence, the build system that they had at that time. If maybe it's Bamboo, I can't remember these days what it was back then.
Yep.
And so it was just a natural step to say, okay, if we're gonna do something that we can sort of, he wanted to be his own boss as well. And so we decided to go in together. I mean, he was doing most of the work, but at that point we were co-founding this company called Witified. And yeah, it was what we had experience in. And it seemed sort of like an if you build it, they will come kind of
Mhm.
situation where you can build something and just put it out there and maybe someone would buy it. And it seemed like a easy, safer way to start. We didn't have to build a point of sale. There was a lot of stuff we didn't have to do to just
Yeah.
get to selling something because we weren't business people. He was a developer with a business degree, but that's not what we did professionally was run businesses.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So for everyone listening, the ecosystem we're talking about is the Atlassian ecosystem, which was
Mhm.
quite nascent back in those days.
Yeah.
How did you pick Atlassian? Did both of you having experience in that space? You said that Daniel had been building already with an existing
Yep.
company in that space. What was it though that drew you to
Exactly.
Atlassian in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was the area that we knew how to interact with and we knew how the plugins were built and everything because I mean, we moved to Jira at Turner Broadcasting back in the days. We had Bugzilla before we moved to Jira and then we had MediaWiki and moved to Confluence and I don't know what we were doing before we moved to like Bamboo or whatever. But yeah, it was where we were working. We already knew how to create plugins. We knew that there was already a massive, even then, a lot of people were starting to use Jira and Confluence. So it seemed like there was a massive customer base already there. And they made it really easy with their SDKs and the marketplace interface, even back then, to list a product and just get
Mhm.
started with a bank account, and it wasn't that difficult. So if you had something that you thought helped you, you could just put it out there and see how maybe somebody will buy this and then just sort of figure it out on the way. So I think it was a lot that was what we knew. We weren't in other ecosystems. We didn't have experience in those. So we started with what was easy.
And I think
Yeah.
it's a really critical point there, and my mind goes to, it's funny how critical that point is in almost everything that you want to go and experience. Like I always say, if you want to be a story writer, write stories about what you know about. If you want to be a
Yeah.
songwriter, write songs about what you know about. If you want to be a software
Yes.
builder in an ecosystem, build in an ecosystem or a space you know about,
Oh,
or
yeah.
that you understand. And I think that is so critical there. I
Yeah.
want to talk about a couple of things that you touched on there, though, and this is going back. This is like early days. This is before the
Yeah.
mega stores of the AWSs and these sorts of things with their big commercial marketplaces. You mentioned that Atlassian made it easy, that they had
Yeah.
sales and transactions, and you didn't have to build a point of sale. You didn't have to build any
Yeah.
of that. What did that mean? What in that worked for you? What did you struggle with?
Well, I don't even know if we knew all the benefits that we would get from that. I mean, now being like actual owners of a business that's trying to be a business and not just a dude selling an app, I think I now know all of the hassles that go into, because we do have our own point of sale for slightly other stuff. And, you're dealing with taxes, you're dealing with registering in multiple companies for VAT and stuff like that. And you're dealing with currency and just a lot of different things that we don't have to deal with. We don't have to process payments. We don't have to do the reminders, the dunnings,
Mm,
all of
mm,
this stuff around the initial subscription. Now, I mean, there's a downside to that. You don't do it, you have no control, right? So,
true, true.
let's just get there.
Yep.
But yeah, so yeah, I almost forgot the question you asked. I was just in that zone.
You're deep in that moment. Well, let's fast
Yeah,
forward a little second then from that. So,
yeah,
and you're right. Like a good marketplace or a good ecosystem lifts the load, reduces the barrier of entry, and makes it easier for people
yeah.
to participate. And that's one of the beautiful things about the Atlassian ecosystem. It did it very, very early on
Mm,
in that process. Let's fast forward to today. So,
mhm,
55 degrees today is a
yeah.
business employing a large number of people. What does the
Mhm.
business look like now because of what you've built in that ecosystem?
Well, I mean, the amount of most of our revenue comes from the Atlassian ecosystem. So I guess I could say that if we weren't in that ecosystem, I have no idea if we would have achieved even a portion of what we achieve right now. So I think this ecosystem has been really critical for us because it gives us the opportunity. I mean, let's just face it, Atlassian has a huge market share. And if we're not where the users are, the companies are, then it's a lot more difficult to get customers. So it's that's one thing you have to think about is where is my target audience? And
Mm, yeah,
do I want to be an embedded
yep.
solution that's in the product, or do I want to have something off to the side that's a destination, but then has to connect? And there's pros and cons to each one.
Correct, correct.
And so that's really difficult. But I think that we have learned almost every business lesson that we've learned in our journey with being on this Atlassian ecosystem, for better or worse.
Yeah,
So I have
yeah,
to say it's a huge building block to where we are.
yeah.
Um, and that's not to say that having that kind of story or a certain amount of dependency in one ecosystem doesn't carry risk. There's a lot of risk in that.
The
But we're
yeah.
trying to ride the wave at the same time we're mitigating risk.
Yeah, and you are so spot on there. There are all those benefits there, right, that have
Yeah.
allowed you to hire the incredible staff members, and I've met a bunch of your
Mhm.
staff members, and they are wonderful, wonderful
Yep.
people, and from all around the world, and you're based in Sweden, which is incredible, and servicing customers everywhere in the world through that. But you're right, it comes with a cost, an Atlassian tax. We used to talk about an AWS
Yeah.
tax and others, and every
Yeah.
marketplace has a
Just
tax.
any ecosystem tax,
An
right?
ecosystem tax, exactly. So as
Yeah.
you think about today, and let's just start with what why stay? What keeps you in this Atlassian ecosystem?
Yeah. I mean, of course, the, there is obviously what I sort of touched on before, that if I left this ecosystem, depending on how hard I leave it, like, is it a soft Brexit or a hard
Yeah, yeah,
Brexit,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like
exactly,
like,
exactly.
do I just leave the Atlassian world altogether and I'm not trying to interact with those customers? And that would, that could be ruinous until I pick up something else. So there's sort of the golden handcuffs aspect
Mm,
of it.
mm,
But if you look past that business answer, the other reason that we stay there is because of the people, to be fair. And that's what you mentioned when we first started. The people make the ecosystem, right?
correct.
And so when I thought through this, when I think through this question, it starts with one, the customers that we actually get through this ecosystem are amazing.
Yeah.
Like, of course, there's always people that are upset about certain apps and how they're functioning and stuff like that. But our customers are awesome. They're excited. They're happy about using our product. They think it's helping them achieve a goal and they want to engage with us to keep making it better. And so that's important. The other marketplace partners is a huge reason why we're still there. I don't know. Of course, I haven't had the exposure to other ecosystems that I've had with the Atlassian one, but I think it would be hard to duplicate this sort of community feeling that we have with the different ecosystem partners because we sort of grew up together in this marketplace, in this ecosystem. I mean, I remember the way that you made money in the ecosystem in the beginning was to sell gap pluggers, like
Yes,
just
yes.
individual app developers filling gaps.
Yep.
And that's transformed so much today into really, that's not a viable business structure anymore. You have to build solutions. Otherwise, you're going to be at risk of Atlassian plugging the gap or something like that. But I mean, I can remember back in the day where when we celebrated Bob Swift, and I don't know if people these days know who he is, but he was the first person to earn $1 million on the marketplace.
All right.
And
Yes.
that was a huge celebration with everyone. And we were like, oh my God, you can do that? Like, that was amazing, and now it's such a whole different thing with like companies, actually being companies running businesses on the marketplace, not just people developing apps. And even, there's so much consolidation going on. The marketplace partners are getting bigger and bigger. Investors are hopping in. I get so many calls from investors in a month or year about people wanting to invest specifically in the Atlassian ecosystem. And
Wow.
so they're calling me, talking to me about that. Even
Yep.
sometimes they're investors in other partners and want to broaden their investment, or they want to get their first step into that ecosystem. And so, of course, that's something that can keep us there as well. But there's lots going on with marketplace partners. Um, we look at, we have a lot of friend companies. Easy Agile is a really good friend company with us.
Wonderful.
Refined is here in Malmo, really good. So we feel like we have a network of people that want to bring each other up. There is some competition in the marketplace, but it's a very supportive community
Mm,
overall. And
mm.
then the people at Atlassian as well. I mean, that's where I met you. You're
Yep.
an awesome person. You're not still there
Thank
anymore,
you.
but there are a lot of people like you. A lot of people like that at Atlassian. It's not always, maybe the person in charge or something like that, but there are people that you work with when it gets down to getting things done that they just really want to do the best thing. And so we've built some really great relationships there. Um, and that's, I think, business aside, if the people were not like this, the business stuff would be a lot less intriguing.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that, and I can remember the number of times. I must admit, I've been lucky enough to be in two software communities like this.
Yeah,
When I was in the
that's
cloud
great.
accounting space, MYOB. Again, I think you touched on something there. It's when you build it from very little or nothing, and you come up together, it creates a camaraderie of those vendors supporting it. I remember we were in Queenstown. I had a bunch of partners around a table at the end of one of the events, and someone said, oh, hey, how are you handling credit cards? And someone else said, oh, I'm using this to handle credit. There's learning back and forth
Mhm.
between each other, sort of stuff, which built that. And I've seen that again, as you said, in the Atlassian ecosystem. And I remember
Yep.
in those partner advisory conversations, and there was a robustness to the conversation, but there was an openness, a sharing, that side of
Hmm.
things.
Yep.
And I didn't see that in the AWS world as much because it's a grander scale. There are different
Yeah.
sorts of companies, and you tend to be working less with the founders and the owners of the business than you do with a person who's doing a job. Um,
Yeah.
there's a different mindset in that sort of thing, and so I think you're spot on there in that side of things of it's the people, it's the relationships, and then there's the commercial reality. And I love the friend analysis of um, easy agile and such like, and refined, and working with them. And I know that certain partners come together to go to market together as well, and it's a
Hmm.
support network in actual business side of things coming out of those, not just
Yep.
sharing the war stories on the way through. So thinking about that side of things, then what? And actually, it's probably point in time. We're getting towards the end of the year. You're thinking about
Yeah.
how the year's gone. What gives you the most satisfaction as an ecosystem partner? Like, how do you measure that this was worth it type mindset?
Yeah. I mean, of course, obviously revenue. So we'll just leave that aside because that goes without saying.
It is important.
Uh, um, there's a couple of things when I look at. We were just talking about partnerships between partners in the Atlassian community. So not just partner to Atlassian and back, but we've started to build these mutually beneficial relationships between marketplace partners. You can see some will, make sure their apps interact together and stuff like
Right.
that. We've made some really good relationships with some solution partners who do training on our products as part of their consulting thing. Or, we help people understand how our apps will further their business. And then our stuff gets bundled in with some of their solutions that get sold. And, barring that, it's just if even if we're sort of in the same area, like Easy Agile, we're adjacent to each other. We're in the same space, but we're not really overlapping. We're I have calls with Nick Muldoon, and he gives us a bit of coaching because he's been
Right.
doing this longer. And, we try to give him some information that maybe can help him too.
Yep.
But, we have those really good relationships. And I think that's what I would feel like I don't have this network that I have that really drives our business forward. But then also, there's on the Atlassian side, when we can feel like we can see the impact we've made with Atlassian and how they're building their platform, when I see sort of like the light come on in someone's eyes when I'm trying to explain to them how a business need that we have that they don't fully understand right now, and it's critical for me that they understand that.
Yep.
When we finally see that light come on and they're like, okay, maybe they can then go advocate for that. And we're not constantly going to have to try to, convince people of this anymore. That's a thing. And then
Mm.
also, I think we've reached a point where um, our company, at least, because of how much we've tried to add value to Atlassian, also tell them the hard truths, but then also help the partners in the ecosystem. I think we're seen sort of as a trusted source of input or, an actual partner in the community. We give back,
Yeah.
even when we don't always get some out of it because it pays out later.
Yep.
And so I feel like we've earned respect and it's hard to build that. So I wouldn't want to just throw that away, unless I
Yeah.
absolutely had to.
Yeah, and I must admit, again, going back to sitting inside Atlassian and wearing both the partnership leader role and the product leader role across the ecosystem, the number of times I was sitting in meetings and
Yeah.
Julia said this, or Daniel said this,
Yeah.
or Nick Muldoon said this,
Yeah.
those anecdotes, those stories were absolutely gold in those meetings
Yeah.
because it grounded you to the voice of the customer. It grounded you to the reality of what was needed in those product decisions. And it was great to see people doing that. And
Yeah.
I always got a huge kick out of product people who had spent time with yourself and anyone else in the ecosystem and was able to then take all that information, come back and share it with us. Flipping that around a little bit, being in the ecosystem, there's a lot of things. Like there is always a product manager who wants to talk to someone, like a phone
Mm,
call or a session like this, or there's always an event to go to, or there's always a partner advisory council to come to. As a business owner,
yeah.
as an owner of a business that's grown up in this ecosystem, is doing okay, but you're still a small business, just like any
Yep.
business, making those sort of decisions. How do you weigh up saying, yes, I'll be involved in that thing versus I'm not going to be involved in this one?
It's really, really hard because both myself and my co-founder really like to be involved in things and want to make sure that we have a voice because we're not the biggest company. And there's always this concern that the massive ones will steal all the voice and that you don't get heard and someone's got to speak for the small to medium people.
Mhm.
Um, but you're right. This is one of the challenges of being in this ecosystem that they're trying to get so much done, and I think it's, from a lot of things, maybe pressure from investors or stakeholders or just having to continuously grow, 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 fast, 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 and there's a lot of debt, of
Mhm.
things that should have been done a long time ago, so, like any product owner, there's a million things you needed to have already done,
Correct.
and sometimes it feels like they're trying to boil the ocean, right? And get it all done at one time because now it's got to get done. And that can be challenging because every dollar we spend on that, we're not spending on developing our core business that we're trying to put through
True.
the
True.
ecosystem. Every hour we spend is an hour I'm not doing strategy for my business and stuff
Yeah.
like that. So I don't know, there's a Swedish term called lagom, which is like the perfect equilibrium or balance where everyone is getting value and it's the sort of content area. You never really find it, but I'm striving for it. So it's like we need to give enough so that we have a voice.
Yeah.
Because if you never participate, you're not going to be able to be heard. So to be taken seriously, you have to put some skin in the game.
Correct.
So some of that. Um, and then it's just the things that we feel are critical to our company. We look and say, okay, well, this thing we really need to be involved in. So we're gonna commit that. We're gonna invest. So we look at it as an investment.
Yeah.
We don't have an unlimited pool of stuff to invest, so we have to choose our battles. But it can be a full-time job keeping up with the change that Atlassian wants to carry through.
Correct.
And that is a challenge when you can't afford to hire people just focused on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
It-
really difficult. And I would say that's something that ecosystems need to remember is
yeah.
like, think about your customer and the rate at which they can accept change. Just like if you were delivering a product and they had to install it every week or something,
Correct.
it's that times a gazillion. You know?
It really is, and it's and again going back through my career, it's been something that and I don't know where I picked it up. It may well have actually been early MYB days. Similar sort of conversations, people saying to me, "We can't be everywhere you want us to be. We can't respond to every API change you want us to respond to. We can't, this sort of stuff, right?"
Yeah.
And so we're wrestling with that. But it's become almost a little bit of a mantra of mine in various ecosystems as to why is it that I need a Julia at this event or this thing? What is it that's in it for her and her business or for 55 degrees? What is it for all of our partners? What is the cost to their business? And I remember sitting with a bunch of events folks and them saying, "Oh, well, airplane tickets are this much and hotels that." I'm like, "Well, yeah, fine. But then
Yeah.
that's a week out of the business. It's a week away from doing this. It's a week where you're not responding as quickly to customer, emails and sales requests, or you're not doing demos with a customer and that sort of thing. And it's
Yeah.
that unseen cost that a lot of people just don't have the cognitive or the 360 view around. So I guess out of this part, for those who are listening, who are leaders in an ecosystem or partner managers in an ecosystem, be the champion of thinking about your partners around the 360, and the impact of a pack or a partner advisory council, the impact of an event isn't just a get them here and they can see customers. It's a week out of the business or it's time out
Mhm.
from other things. And so I think that's a huge thing. So thank you for sharing that one. But thinking
Yep.
about well then and ecosystem health in general. And I know you've been in the Atlassian swim lane. You said 2012, what are we, 2015, 2025. So it's like
Yeah.
13 years.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, so thinking about that, if I ask you, what does a healthy ecosystem look like? What's your
Yeah.
response?
Um, I think a healthy ecosystem, if it wants to continue, just sort of like a healthy app as well, you have to not only think about getting your partners, but keeping them as well. So, an ecosystem that supports not only the commercial success of the platforms they want you to build on, but also seek to understand what builds the commercial success of the vendors who are selling their apps through the platform. I mean, I guess it's one thing if you're just like an Apple store and you don't really care, like, it's not
Yeah,
trying to
yeah,
integrate so much with your
yep.
software. I mean, that's sort of a different kind of thing. But it's one that has an understanding of the business needs of the people selling in your marketplace. I would love to see ecosystems or marketplaces have people in their organization that have sold stuff on a marketplace. That
That
hardly ever
goes right
happens.
there.
I
Yes.
keep wanting to say, like, if you had to go through this process,
Yep.
how would that feel to you? You know?
Hmm.
And I don't
Oh,
think that, I mean, a healthy ecosystem would have the mindset that a vendor is a customer,
yep.
and everything we do with products to understand and cater to our customers, they have two types of customers, not just the people buying the stuff, but the people selling the stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to pay attention to both, not just
Correct.
one.
Correct.
And all of that sort of rolls down just having mutual respect for each other.
Yeah, yeah, mutual respect, empathy, and the
Yeah.
ability to say, "I've walked in your shoes," that sort of
Yeah.
thing, is a huge. It earns trust, it earns respect, it earns that sort of knowledge. And I do know at Atlassian, we worked really hard to try and get to the point where we could actually transact on our own marketplace and buy the apps
Yeah,
in, which
exactly.
earlier days, like the P2 world, that was
Yeah.
happening all the time. But in the later days when I was there in the cloud world, it was happening much less.
Yeah.
And so we actually had to put new
Yeah.
things in place around Forge and other things to try and make that a reality. Um, so yeah, I think, and at AWS, we used to hire people who had been
Yeah.
in the software side of the world to come in and
Yeah.
run them,
Right.
um, or had run businesses before. Because there's something about being a partner manager and having said, "Yeah, I've done strategy before, I've done business, that sort of thing." And then you're sitting with the founder and the CEO, and you're talking through
Yeah.
not just the technical database side of things. Hi, Daniel, we're talking about those sort of stuff, but you're actually sitting there
Right.
and you're talking through the sales revenue numbers and the cost of acquisition, and you're talking through the
Right.
growth and the profitability and those sort of things, and sharing the war stories on the way through, I think is a critical part of what actually makes a healthy ecosystem. People who have walked in that thing. So just think about where you're at right now. Atlassian ecosystem is going through
Mm.
another transformation. I think this is something
Yeah.
that I find unique with Atlassian versus others, is that's had these quite significant transitions in its own life, which has meant the marketplaces had to come through them. And you're going through one right now. And you mentioned before about the whole idea of building smaller gap filling or accessory type solutions versus full fledged standalone products, really deeply integrated side of things.
Yeah.
Do you think it's healthy right now? Do you think there is transformation going on at the moment? Do you think it's going to emerge out the other side?
I think it will definitely emerge out the other side. I mean, is it healthy? Well, it's not dying, but it's not in peak health either. Like, it's got really significant growing pains going on. It's, from the IPO through extremely fast growth and dealing with legacy systems and not being able to move fast enough. That's driven a lot of choices that might have caused a lot of pain
Mm,
over time. And that's something I guess every growing company goes through in one form or fashion. We're in our tiny company, we're growing too, and we have those things just at a much smaller scale.
yeah.
Um, but I think that is something healthy. Well, a big signal is if it's growing over time. And I mean, there's a huge growth in this ecosystem. And I see that continuing, more and more dollars being spent in the marketplace, it becoming more and more valuable to Atlassian. But so I think the marketplace itself will survive, but things are changing a lot inside of the marketplace. And like we were just saying, vendors who were thriving in what it used to be may not be able to thrive in what it's becoming. And so you really have to think about it, will I be able to survive here? And if not, how early can I recognize that and decide if I need to pivot or make a change? So it's challenging. It's again, it's that keeping up, it's understanding where they're going and understanding enough about, are they communicating enough about the steps they're going to take to get there so we understand why things are happening and we can get on board sooner and understand really the reason behind these changes. Um, so yeah, it's got a few chronic conditions, but it's healthy enough and it'll be fine in the long run. Yeah.
But I think you touch on a couple of really interesting points there. And I think one of them really, again, speaking to the Atlassians of the world or the vendors of the world, is that
Yeah.
communication path is so critical. And I know I've wrestled with it many, many times in my career where you know the full story, but you are wearing the Atlassian hat or the MYB hat or the AWS hat, and you are limited as to what you can say because they are
Mhm.
publicly traded businesses, and so
Yeah.
you're not allowed to say certain things, but you have these businesses who you've now built a personal relationship with, and you know that I
Wanna
remember
say it so bad.
what was that?
You wanna say it so bad.
Yeah, exactly. You do. You really do, because you know that there are jobs on the line. You know there are
Yeah.
people in the office. You know there are, you
Yeah.
know, you know someone's expecting a new one, or someone's got a kid going to school or something. You know
Yeah.
those kinds of things,
I
and you're
get it.
sitting there and you're invested in the businesses, but you certainly can't. And I think that's the thing where, as businesses, we do need to take people on the journey, and that's where partner advisory councils absolutely come into play a
Yeah.
little bit. Can't always share that with the wider community either. So
Yeah.
I think, for vendors, yeah, absolutely think about how are you communicating with your partners and giving them enough leg up on the way through. One thing that AWS did really well was have access to various funds and tool sets and resources to really lean in and support certain partners on the way through. Not everybody could have access to those either. But again, it's like if there was a significant shift that required a new sales team or something, there was ways to say, hey, we'll put some innovation funding together, we'll put some other funding together. So there are ways vendors can support that alongside communication. But I think you
Yeah.
draw on a really good point there. Is like, really successful and healthy ecosystems believe in their vendors or their partners that are in
Yeah.
them, point where they actually coach, they invest, they support, and they really communicate and take them on that
No.
development journey, which I think is so critical. But
To
on the
be
other,
fair, I
yeah,
they some sometimes the lack of communication is because partners haven't proven to be trustworthy enough to keep the information secret. So I do have to put myself in the other shoes
yeah,
sometimes, and it can be a tricky line to balance for them.
yeah. And it only takes one to break trust, right? Like trust is so easy,
Mhm.
regardless in life, like trust is always so easy to lose and so hard to gain. But it only takes one person to
Yeah,
post it on a social media platform, and all of a sudden it's like nobody
exactly.
does it again, right? And it's all done. And like any family, any community, any group is going to have the dark sheep, and and
Yeah,
and you work around those ones. So thinking now, healthy ecosystem, yeah, it's an ecosystem that you're a part of. It has given birth to 55 Degrees and the great
yeah,
team you've got there. So there's so much to be thankful for. But as you think
yes,
about tomorrow and the transformation and the change that's coming, I do know that you've been experimenting with other ecosystems,
yeah,
Azure DevOps and some other little bits and pieces there.
yeah,
What's your current thinking there? Are you looking to just gently expand out the business? What's the future of 55 Degrees and ecosystems look like?
yeah. I mean, look, as long as I'm not doing stuff that's patent protected and stuff like that, there's always the chance that Atlassian could come and just do what I'm doing tomorrow and I wouldn't know it, and then my revenue could be slashed. So in one way, I'm looking at diversifying across platforms as a risk mitigation to my business. I think it's crucial that I don't have all my eggs in one basket, I think, as we had talked about one time
Yeah.
before. But I also see the tremendous growth in other ecosystems that even if everything stays the same in Atlassian and we still thrive there, that I can grow my business significantly at a much higher rate by getting in new ecosystems than trying to incrementally grow inside of the one we're already doing well in. And so it's just sort of pure business. And we're seeing a lot of actual movement from the people who leave Atlassian. A lot are going to Azure DevOps. And so we acquired our first app and it already had a presence there. Uh, and when we talked about getting into new ecosystems, there's a lot of knowledge you don't know if you just hop into an ecosystem. You don't really know how
Right.
things work. And so we're having to invest a lot into any ecosystem that we want to go into so that we do the apps right.
Yeah.
In that we can't just plop it from Jira and throw it into Azure.
Yeah.
It's like you need to be cloud native. I need to be Azure native or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
So yeah, it's what we're trying to do for both of those reasons, growth and risk mitigation.
Excellent. Well, Julia, it's been an incredible privilege to be just this tiny sliver of your journey
Yeah,
as part of the Atlassian ecosystem, but to sit
yeah,
and listen to you and that thought process. The thing I've always loved about you and Daniel together is the consideration you have for the greater good of the community and the people around us. So I thank you for that. And I
yeah,
thank you for being a part of this. I'll wrap up with one
thank you.
last question that I'm asking various folks. By the way, you're not allowed to answer ChatGPT. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I've been.
as Julia, the wonderful juggling master you are of all the things in life, what's one tool that you can't live without right now?
One tool that I can't live without right now. Well, okay, not ChatGPT. What's really saving my life right now, and this wasn't pre-planned because I didn't know you were gonna ask me this,
Yeah,
is
gotcha.
actually my personal Trello board. Like I am
Oh,
all about working on a team Kanban board and stuff like that, and that's all great. My work is just like squirrels that I'm having to herd together from Slack and everywhere, and there's just some really for right now, this tool is helping me get my shit together. Nothing else is helping me right now. Next year, it might be a to-do list on paper, who knows? But right now, my Trello board is keeping me sane with a
great.
lot of power-ups to support the things that I need to control all my cats, you know?
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. A tool that makes sense of Julia's brain. That's incredible.
Yes.
I love it. I love it. Julia, it has been wonderful chatting to you. Thank you for sharing as part
Yeah.
of your experience, building a business, leading a team, and being part of an ecosystem. It's been wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Folks, that brings us to the end of another episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share, post this all around the place. Keep your comments coming. I always enjoy reading those, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.